So, a very good morning to all the esteemed participants and our expert for today, Dr. Jajodia. So, we are going to start. Um, so, I welcome all the participants to this FDP. And on behalf of this Atal FDP on quantum computing and Guwahati University, I welcome you all to this program. Guwahati University is situated in the city of Guwahati, and it is the oldest and one of the premier universities of Northeast India, accredited with NAC A grade and among the first 50 institutes in NIRF ranking across the entire country. And we offer various say PG, UG, and PhD degrees in say diverse domains across arts, humanities, science, technology, commerce, fine arts, etc. So our first topic for session one, that is quantum computing in the abstract, and our expert for this session is Dr. Bobita Jajodia. So let me take the privilege of introducing Dr. Jajodia to all our participants. So Dr. Jajodia is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering at the Indian Institute of Information Technology, Guwahati. She is working from July 2019. Prior to that, she has received a PhD degree in VLSI design from Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Following that, she worked in the Department of ECE, Guwahati University, as a guest faculty, and her research interests are on VLSI design for digital analog mixed signal systems and quantum computing. So she has several international level research papers to her credit. So I welcome Dr. Jajodia for this session, and I request Dr. Jajodia to deliver her talk.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Manas. Thank you for a short introduction. Yeah, so I'm very glad to be the opening session of this Atal FDP program. So hope I'm able to share few information which I know. Yeah, so basically quantum itself states if you don't know anything, that means you are working on the quantum. Yeah, so it's something we will be discussing that based on the probability and superposition. It's like both side of the coin, right? We know everything but we don't know anything. Yeah, so
Yeah.
thanks to you. So with this I take over the session. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, please.
So is the screen is visible? Can someone just confirm it?
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Yeah. So I'm Dr. Babita Jajodia, Assistant Professor in Department of EC, IIIT Guwahati. I have started working on quantum computing not more than last 1.5 year. Yeah, but it's a very exciting field, and since it's in a baby step, right? Every day we can see a few modifications as well as research is going on by various companies as well as there are multiple quantum providers, right? IBM, then Google has not opened the IBM has given the public access for few qubits, but since Google as well as like D-Wave and etc., they are a paid service. Yeah. So we will try to explore a little bit in the quantum computing in the abstract level. By the term abstract level, I basically means where do we stand compared to the classical computing and what add-on this quantum computing will bring to the present modern computing system. Okay. So with this, as already Mr. Manas has given a brief introduction about myself. So again, it might be a repeat. Yeah. So basically, I work in the Department of EC, but my main motive is I'm open for the research collaboration. Yeah, because with research we come to know what to do and what not to do. Yeah, so I'm open for research collaborations as well as any interns from any institutes or anyone is interested for any internship in undergraduate level or postgraduate level, he or she is most welcome, and they can send me a mail at my respective email address, yeah, at babita@iitga.ac.in with the subject and what is your interest on that. Yeah, So with this, like before we start quantum computing, yeah. So the first question which comes came to my mind as well, right? So why quantum computing, right? Because classical computing is more than efficient with the present GPU strength and etc. Right? So why to go to a quantum computing? Will quantum computing replace the classical computing, or will quantum computing will be an add-on support to the classical computing? Yeah, so that's what we will try to understand, like to come a conclusion. Definitely there is some add-on which will bring it to the classical computing, right? So before that we go to the quantum computing. It seems like like quantum computing is very tough and etc. Yeah, बहुत mathematics है वहाँ पे something sort. But before that, since from the VLSI perspective, I will try to make a little bit brief introduction so that we know where we stand, right? What is the classical computing? So let's recap what the classical computing is. So basically, when we say classical computer, right? So it's basically like binary representation. We have all everything whatever we represent. The computer which I'm using to present to you as well, it's in the bits format, right? Might be 32-bit or 64-bit. So we are very well acquainted with the bits, right? So then there are various Boolean logic which we use to make it combinational logic or sequential. So next is universality, right? So what we mean by this, like it's used in the universal form, right? Second, reversibility. So we will be discussing about this topic one by one. So basically, classical computing, the recap part, what we'll be covering. So basically, it is 5 points. I think it will be very basic to make you understand binary representation and etc. because that's well known. But the main concept which makes the classical computing differentiate from the quantum computing is basically the reversibility. Okay. Okay. So when I say binary, it's the normal numbers which I say 1, 2, 3, 4. Generally, it's a human language. We use it like a base 10 for the counting, right? But in the binary, it's basically base 2, either 0 or 1. Yeah. So it can be given by a bulb, right? So if bulb is off, so it's 0. And if the bulb is 1, is on, that means 1, right? When we say 0 and 1, it basically indicates the lowest voltage as well as the highest voltage in the circuit, right? So base 2 is binary and there are two possible digits, right? So it's like 0 and 1 only, right? And what is the full form of bit? It's a binary digit, right? So then we can describe any number by a combination of any bits, and all the operations of the classical computing happens by just changing the position of the bits as well as by changing the values of the bits by 1 and 0. Yeah. That's it. Yes. So next is like basically then comes the logic gates. As it's well known, there are various basic gates which we use for the classical computing. So these are the names AND or NOT, NAND, NOR, and XOR. NAND and NOR gates are basically the universal gates, and these are the symbols as well as the this operator. So whenever we apply any logic, or we generally try to first place the truth table and then we frame it up the basic circuit. So why I'm mentioning about the truth table and etc. Even if it's done in the quantum computing, at the end, everything will be in the quantum state. Once you do the measurement, the quantum state will definitely move towards the classical state. Yeah, we will be very soon coming to know about this, but these are the basic things related to the in gates, right? So next, as we mentioned the term universality, what do we mean by it? Any computation operation can be made by using a combination of not, and, or, fan out, and etc. Slide change. Okay. Next, as I mentioned about the reversibility, yeah. So this is a very most important parameter, or you can say the very important concept which differentiate the quantum computing with the classical computing. Given the output of a state, we can determine what the inputs are. Generally, when we design in the classical computing, we provide the input and we get the output. But if it's a vice versa, if I provide the output, you don't know what is the input. There can be multiple possibilities out of that, right? So that makes it different from the quantum computing, right? So it's if I say reversible gate, it preserves all the information, and when I say non-reversible gate, it loses some information. Very soon we will come to know like which one is the reversible and which one is the non-reversible. Why the slide is going back? Okay. Okay, so now comes the main objective. Yeah, so what is the objective of this lecture, right? So why we are learning about the classical computing when this course is about the quantum computing? Yeah, so here comes the more interesting things. As in the classical, we had the bits. In the quantum, it's qubits. Qubits is quantum bits, right? Then the another important parameter is quantum superposition, right? So when we say superposition, so when we flip a coin, it's like we don't know until it's a match fixing, yeah. So we don't know whether it's a zero or one, right? Whether it's a head or tail, right? So it's in the superposition until the coin is in the air, right? Once it goes to the ground, we come to know, okay, it's an head and tail. So that's a superposition efficiency. Like when it's in the air, and you can say when the qubits is in the quantum state, we don't know whether it will be head or tail. Yeah, so that's a very important parameter. Based on this, the quantum computing has an efficiency to make the parallel computing, like you can provide multiple inputs at the same state, because when the coin is in the air, we don't know whether it's a 0 and 1, so it's like 50% 50% probability. So next, as we have the logic gates in the classical computing, we have the quantum gates in the quantum computing as well. Now comes another thing, quantum entanglement, right? So what do we mean? We mean by an entanglement. So let's take a very basic example. Like for example, if the college is open, right? So definitely you will have the class, right? But if your college is closed, then you don't have the class. I'm applying this example just for the offline. So it's entangled, right? If the college is on or is open, that means you will have the class. If your college is closed, that means you don't have the class. So there, these two conditions, or you can say these two states are entangled to each other, right? So if the college is open, so your class will be there. If your college is closed, there won't be any class. So it's like you can say 0 0 and 1 1. So if the first state is 0, definitely the other state will also be 0, right? And if the first state is 1, that means if your college is open, that means definitely your class will happen. So it's a 1. So there is only two states if you take two qubits, right? Because each state will be defined by a bit. So 0 0 and 1 1. Okay. So this is an example related to this. So basically we will be understanding this four things. Yeah. So now comes the most important thing. So whatever I mentioned, they can be called as a quantum properties, right? So when we say quantum computing, at the back end, when it's a quantum state, so basically these three important properties always apply, right? So it's a superposition, entanglement, as just I gave the interference example, and then it's a quantum interference. When I say quantum interference, what happened? For example, if there is a possibility to either cancel what state you require or to amplify the state what you require. Okay, so these three weird properties. So it's a quantum computing. Everyone says it's a weird right now. Yeah, we don't know what the state will be. So this is just terminology to be used. These three weird quantum properties enable the design of quantum algorithms which can compute in ways classical computers cannot. So it's a saying right now that quantum computing has the efficiency to solve the NP-hard problem, which can't be easily solvable by the classical computers. Okay. So based on this statement, we can say the quantum computers are more powerful for solving certain types of problem, and such type of problems can be called as NP-hard problem. Might be due to the like complexity, as well as might be more computing power of the quantum computers. Okay. So please note it down, these three important properties which are very much important to carry forward the quantum computers. So before we move ahead, yeah, so let's understand a little bit about the quantum history. Yeah. So when I say quantum history, so basically let's start from the backward. 2019, it was defined like a quantum supremacy. When we say quantum supremacy, it basically means like quantum computers will be able to solve such problems which are not solved by the classical computers. So it indicates like there is a supremacy of quantum computing compared to the classical computing. So let's say like around from the last 4 decades, 1981, Feynman first of all proposed a framework for simulating the evolution of quantum systems. Yeah, I won't go into the details of the technique or the framework. Just this is an indication how the history started, right? Then, as everyone we know, Shor's algorithm. Shor's algorithm has an efficiency to factorize the large prime numbers, which is basically used for the cryptography applications, right? So Peter Shor shows that quantum computer can factorize large integers very efficiently, right? So there is a claim if like for a quantum computers, the factorization optimization can be done in a few minutes, which used to be done by the classical computers by taking around multiple years. Okay, so he proposed an algorithm in 1994, as well as he mentioned about the quantum computers can do it. Right. Next, 1998, the first experiment was done on the taking an example of the quantum computers, and that was done just only for 2 qubits. Yeah, and they have used the NMR quantum computer technique. It's a nuclear magnetic resonance. This is basically a technique where you use the molecule instead of a particular state, right? So then in 2012, right, so few qubits processor was done, and as it's like a superposition and there might be quantum errors, right? So basically there were few techniques which were under research to find it out how the error correction or the error detection can be looked into, right? Then came the most important thing, after which you can say how the quantum computing took a peak, right? So IBM has started a cloud-based quantum computing, yeah. So based on that, and they have given a public access with a limited number of qubits. This created the curiosity among the people, right, to start working, because until we are not able to have the experimental exposure, right, or not to be able to use it, we don't know the efficiency. Yeah, so based on this, from 2017, based on the few public essays, so people started, as well as the researchers and etc., tried to explore, and they came to know, yeah, definitely quantum computing has an add-on to the classical computing, but it will be very early to judge. Yeah, because it's still in the R&D perspective, and there are multiple research going on in the calibration as well as in the quantum hardware as well. Okay, and as I mentioned about the quantum supremacy as well. So here, as mentioned, quantum bits. So now we have understood what's the difference between the classical computing as well as the quantum computing. So our journey starts from here, taking the qubits, right? We will be mentioning the qubit. It itself indicates the quantum bits, right? And as we have discussed the three weird properties: superposition, entanglement, as well as the interference. So we will be starting discussion about this. So I think now we have a basic foundation of how the quantum computing means. At least if someone mentions qubits, right? So we already know, yeah, so he or she is trying to explain us regarding the quantum computing, right? So how quantum computers compute, right? So that's like use. So how the journey from bit to qubit. So if it's a bit, it's a 0 and 1, and it's in the qubit. So basically it's given by this symbol. It's a ket of 0 and 1. So what does this symbol basically indicates? It indicates the very simple example. If you see qubit, whenever it defines a state, it's defined as a vector. Okay, so basically the quantum computers, one way you can say it's an interpretation of few mathematical concepts. So linear algebra is a very important thing which is required for the quantum computing. So this represents a vector, right? So we will be looking into this, like what is a vector representation of all this. Yeah, so the journey from bit to qubit, bit is 0 to 1, qubit will be represented by 0 and 1, right? So you can say ket 0 and 1. So this symbol itself indicates it's a ket, and it indicates we are talking about the quantum states. Okay. So next, as we discussed about the quantum superposition, quantum qubit subject can be in two states at once. Yeah, when the coin was in the air, it was in both the head and tail state at the same time. Okay, until it came to a measurement. Like measurement, it comes to the ground. We came to know, okay, it's a 0 or 1. It means it's a head or it's a tail. So basically superposition, as we have mentioned, a qubit can be a 0 and 1 at the same time. This is how, so this is a quantum state, right? So it defines alpha ket 0 plus beta 1. So this alpha and beta are basically indicating the amplitude, or you can say the probability amplitude, that it will be a 0 state or 1 state, right? So after measurement, if you're getting only 0 state as the output, that means alpha was having the value of 1 and beta was having the value of 0, right? And probability is lie between 0 and 1. So basically this part has been cut off, right? So the another important concept, measurement. Once you do the measurement, it collapses the quantum state of the qubit, this state, to either 0 or 1. So if you want 0 as the state, so alpha will be equal to 1, and if it's in the 1 state, so that means beta is equal to 1. So if 1 is in the 1 state, as all the amplitude summation will be equal to 1. Okay. So measurement, as just now what I mentioned, right? So the equation is alpha and beta. So measurement has collapsed. So what is the probability of measuring the 0? It will be a square of the probability amplitude. Okay, similarly the probability of 1 as well as by beta square. So again, this is an example like 50-50% superposition of 0 and 1. It's clear from here as well. The amplitude of this will be square root of zero point 0.5, so that once you square it, you will get the probability as zero point 0.5. Similarly for this, right? So if you want it to be 90 and 10%, so the amplitude of 0 will be square root of zero point 0.9, as well as for 10, it will be zero point 0.1. So based on this, we will be learning very soon how to design the quantum gates as well. So, as we mentioned about the quantum gates, in the classical it's called as a logic gates, and here it's called a quantum gates. Yeah. So when we say quantum gates, definitely as in the classical we have the inverter, right? Single bit. So now it's a single qubit. So basically the basic gates in the single qubits are X gate, Z gate, and the Hadamard gate. Hadamard gate is also called as an H gate. Okay. And this is the most important gate which is responsible to create it in the superposition state. Okay. So now when I say X gate, it's also represented by the symbol and it's called a bit flip. When I say bit flip, it's basically if you provide input as 0 state, it will give you output as 1 state, and vice versa. If you provide 1 as the input state, it will provide 0 at the output state. So similarly, when I say Z, it is also called as a phase gate, right? So it changes the phase of the state. Please note it down, as all the states are basically a vector, right? So it will have both the magnitude and the direction as well. Yes. So next, as I mentioned about the Hadamard gate, so this is the gate responsible for the superposition. Generally, it creates a 50 to 50 superposition from 0 and 1, right? Next, quantum gates apply. Now the important thing, as we know few linear properties or as well as multiple properties. So quantum gates apply to each state of the superposition. So it can be applied separately or in the parallel. So let's say if you have a quantum state called psi, right? And if you apply the X gate. So we can define the mathematical expression in this way. Since alpha is a constant value, we can take it out. So X will be applied at the 0 qubit and X will be applied to the 1 state here, right? So what happens as the X gate is applied to the 0 state, as we have understood, it will just flip it, right? So X of 0 will be 1 and beta of X this will become 0. So basically what you have seen, initially the state which was in 0, it has changed to be 1, and 1 which was in the state that has been changed to 0. Okay. But the probabilities of that is same. Okay. Okay. So next, the last important weird quantum properties is the quantum interference, right? So what do we mean by quantum interference? So interference itself has a physical significance of it. So let's say you put two classical coin flips, right? So what is the chance? 50% it will be 0 and 50% it will be 1, right? But in that case, if you apply two edge gate back to back, what happens? It's we started with the 0, definitely the 0 state will have the 100% probability, right? So why it's so? Because the quantum interference property has a property that it can cancel the state which was the present state or which was the intermediate state, or it can amplify the state whichever you require. So here you have seen, if you have started with the initial at 0, it has amplified it, or you can say it has confirmed, right? After 2 Hadamard gate, you will definitely get 100% probability of getting the 0 again. Okay, so that's a very important property. Like based on this, we can apply this to any circuit whichever we want. Suppose you want to sanguine it, right? It want to be the 0 state, so definitely you can apply the technique of the quantum superposition and make it confirm. So this is like, as we are mentioning, yeah, quantum computers are like very efficient and they are the faster. So this is the state. For example, if as you apply the number of qubits, so definitely the number of superposition state will be to the 2 to the power n number of qubits. So here, what's the difference? If it's 2, so definitely it will be 0 and 1. So these values, if you see the internal values, they represent the classical notation only. Just cat represents like it's in a vector format, right? So in the 8 states, it will start from 0 to 7. Similarly for the 16. But what makes it different compared to the classical, what happens, all these states are available at the same time, right? So same logic you check in the classical also. But what you do, you apply one by input one by one, right? So for example, if you need to check for all the 8 states, so definitely you need around 8 clock cycles to check all the inputs in the classical computing, right? But in the superposition, what can happen if you apply an Hadamard gate? All these 8 states are available at the same time, and you will get the output with respect to the probabilities in the form of a histogram as well. Okay. So n qubits 2 to the power n superposition states at the same time. Each operation acts on all the elements of the superposition. For example, if 0, 0, it will do its task as the input and output at the same time. Similarly, the others. Okay. So as I mentioned, quantum supremacy. So this is the physical meaning as well. A programmable quantum device that can solve a problem that no classical computers can solve in any feasible amount of time. So the most important advantage right now is like time complexity as well as the time improvement is at the peak for the quantum computers compared to the classical computers. Okay. So I think this has been clear, I think yet from this figure. So 2 qubits, right? So let's say we have 2 qubits, qubit A and B. So definitely it will have 4 states because 2 qubits, 2 to the power 2 is equal to 4 state. So we can write it in this way: 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So or we can define it in different ways. So here what is the definition? Qubit A is 0 state, qubit B is in 0 state. Similarly for 0, 1, a is in 0, B is in 1. Similarly, 1, 0, it's 1, then again 0. Similarly, 1, 1, it's qubit A is 1. Similarly, this is just like how to read this. Okay. Then comes the most important, as we have discussed about the 3 gates, which are single qubit, right? So now we will have a look into 2 qubits. Yeah, when I say 2 qubits, it will process inputs on like having 2 qubits. For example, let's take an AND gate. Okay, generally we provide 2 inputs, right? It can be designed for higher bits as well, but the minimal is 2. So C0 gate is one of the gate which is a 2 qubit, and this is a very important gate, and this has also been considered as a basis gate for multiple IBM quantum computers right now present. So what do we mean by C naught, right? So it's the same controlled knot. That means it has a NOT gate, right? But it is controlled, right? And the other way to represent it is also CX gate. So here what's the definition? We can form out a truth table as well, right? So if the control qubit is 0, so it does nothing. If the control qubit is 1, it flips the target qubit. So generally this is the symbol or notation by which the C naught gate has been defined, right? So based on this, like we will have the target out of it. Okay, we will.
Dr.
Yeah.
Jajodia, I'm sorry I have to interfere a bit.
Yes.
Means we have to take a pause because the
Yes. Yes.
participant has to say attempt a mandatory awareness test.
Okay. Yeah, not an issue. Yeah, we can keep on hold for some time.
Okay, okay. So,
Yeah.
participants, I request all of you to kindly attempt the awareness test. Link we have already shared yesterday through mail, and now in the set box also we have shared the link. So please attempt it. That is a mandatory say, test designed by the Otol cell. So there is no marking involved. It is just an awareness test, but it is mandatory. So from 9:30 to 9:45. Every participant should attempt that. So please attempt it. This is an MCQ. So few MCQ questions are there. So please attempt it. Also, there is another announcement that already we have shared the information, but I just want to share it again that from 10 to 10:30 there will be an inaugural session. That will be a central inauguration at say Atal Cell, New Delhi. So 56 FDPs are will be inaugurated at the same time. So streaming will be there. We have already shared the link for the streaming. So I request all the participants to attend the say inaugural session from say 10 a.m. to 10:30. Thank you.
Madam, I have a clarification regarding the talk.
Yeah.
Madam, I want to see your slide that is superpositions that you have made.
Okay. Just a minute, yeah. Yes. This slide, sir.
No, next slide. That just ending of the superposition.
This one.
That you are told. Oh, that this one.
This one.
Madam, the creating 50-50 superpositions, this is about Hada market you are talking. That
Yes.
is how to state that is 50-50 superposition you have mentioned, na?
Yes.
No, that mathematical form you have mentioned.
Pardon, I
That's,
didn't get your point, yeah?
Madam, you have mentioned that if you to create a 50-50 superpositions, you have
Yes.
mentioned a state name, na? Psi as something like this.
Okay, that slide you want to see?
Yes.
This one? Just a minute. Can you just mention this slide?
This slide, madam, as example.
Yes.
That you have mentioned psi is equal to root of. Okay, madam.
It's basically like when 50%, right? So
Okay.
50% for 0 and 50% for 1, right? So we
Okay.
can
Okay.
put the value in this. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I think till others are attempting the test, right? If anyone has any query, he or she can ask me. Please feel free for any questions. Yeah. If I'm not able to answer, that's also welcomed. Yeah.
Okay, so I hope that all the participants have attempted the mandatory test. So now we will be in the session again because we have to break at 10 again, from 10 to 10:30 to attend the inaugural session. Okay, so over to Dr. Jajodia.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Manas. Yeah, so we were discussing about the two qubit gates, right? So we discussed about the C naught, right? It's also called, like, the full form is controlled knot. And we have mentioned it takes two inputs, or you can say two qubit state. Based on this, it does. So if the control qubit is 0, please note it down. If I say 0, I'm not defining this as a bit. It still is in the quantum state, yeah? But just for easy understanding, because right now we are everything in the quantum, right? So it indicates 0, indicates the 0 state, okay? It does not do anything. And if the control qubit is 1, we flip the target. So basically you can see this is the symbol of the C naught gate. C naught gate is also called a CX gate. It's like control X gate. Basically, if it is flipping something, or it's flipping the bit, it's basically the X gate property. Yes. So next, as we discussed about the quantum entanglement, taking an example, right? If a college is open, so definitely you will have your class. And if your college is closed, definitely you won't have the class. So we can also say entanglement is also similar to correlation, right? So quantum correlation, it's a correlation between two qubits where the state of one of the qubit is dependent on another, right? So as the taking the class is having a correlation, or it depends on whether the college is open or not. Yeah. So entangled state can also be defined by a mathematical equation, right? As we discussed, this is the value of the probability, square root of that. This will define like 0, 0. So if college is open, class, sorry, if the college is closed, no class. If college is open, there will be a class, right? So basically, when you will be measuring the psi, so basically it's like square root of 0.5 whole square, it will be 0.5. So we will get 0, 0 state with 50% probability, and 1, 1 state with 50% probability. Okay. So if you want to change it like 60% and 40%, right? So you have to play around with this probabilities values. So 60% and 40%, so this will become square root of 0.6, and this will become square root of 0.4. Okay. So as I mentioned, yeah, just now, how we, as once you do the measurement, it basically gets converted into to the classical bit. So if qubit A is 0, the quantum state of B will immediately set to 0, because 0 is entangled or correlated with the 0 state of B. Similarly, if the qubit state is 1, the quantum state of qubit B will immediately set to 1. Okay. So now, as we are discussing about the three different weird properties, right? So what are the applications of entanglement? We will be discussing about this in very soon, I think in the second or third session. So quantum teleportation, right? So this is one of the most important and interesting application of quantum entanglement. Teleportation, right? So it's an example, two persons are sitting at different places and they are not connected to each other, but they are entangled to each other, and the data will be transferred from one place to another. Next important application is quantum cryptography. Next is super dense coding. We will be discussing about this in the third session. Okay, so it's basically you are sending two classical bits using only a single qubit. Okay, so it's like you are saving 50% of the bits, right? Then quantum speedups, as we discussed as well, using the properties of the states, right? We are basically testing it like multiple states at the same time, as well as it has a huge computing power that can help us to solve the problems which are NP hardest. Okay. So as just now I mentioned quantum teleportation, so the definition is transferring information or matter from one point to another without physically moving things. Okay, this is just a pictorial representation, right? Like for example, I am right now available at my home, so I am available at the same time in my institute as well. Yeah. So next, now as we have mentioned, yeah, what entanglement. So how we will create the entanglement, right? So this is an example how the entanglement circuit will be generated. As we have discussed, HK, this is a single qubit gate. So you have a single input and you have a single output, right? But for entanglement, you need the two qubits. So you will connect the output of this to a CX gate, where this dot will be controlled, and this similar to an XOR symbol, this will be the target, right? So if you design this quantum state and start with the initial state as 0, 0, you will get the output entangle when an input is like both will be the 0 output or 1. And what do you mean by 1 by square root of? Yeah, anyone wants to say something? So this define basically 1 by square root of 2 whole square, it's 0.5. That means this is having equal probability and this is having equal probability. This is similar to square root of 0.5. Okay. Okay, so now we have discussed, I think now we have a glance of how the quantum computing, classical computing, and what makes us differentiate, right? So it's a thing, right? We already know about this as well. Quantum computing is basically, you can say, I might be wrong on this, but basically there is lot of maths underlying this, right? So why all the maths, right? Why we need to understand the maths? So first of all, the math is very important foundation. Yeah. So with this feeling, it's given an example with an Albert Einstein. Yeah. So when you finally understand a very good problem, yeah. So we are at the peak, right? We are very happy. Yeah. Finally, we understood this. But when I say quantum computing, we don't need very tough mathematics to understand. We need to understand the concept related to the 3 points, and that also very basic will work out, right? So we need to understand a brief knowledge about the linear algebra, then a concept about the probability, as the example regarding 50%, 50% superposition, and etc. We have do the analysis on the probability, right? And then complex numbers. If you are well enough to know the basics only of this, we can start working on the quantum computing at the very basic level. Yeah. So these 3 topics are very much useful for the quantum computing, and as well as this is very much important for any field of the STEM as well. Yes. So you either, if you are not working on the quantum computing as well, but if you know all this, right? So you are better prepared for your coursework as well. The students and etc. Those who are working on this. Yeah, and the very basic foundation of this is very much required for the research as well. Yes. So the math is hard and you probably won't understand everything at the distance. That's okay. But once we do the practice, right, and practice makes the main perfect. So this will we will understand to master the concept as well. Okay. So don't worry, like it's like lot of maths. We need only 3 domain knowledge. One is the linear algebra, one is the probability, and the complex number. So this is as well said by a Professor Scott at the UT Austin, right? So quantum mechanics is a beautiful generalization of the laws of probability. Okay, so we need the probability, complex number concept, as well as this definition. Okay. So now in the today's lecture, I think might be after the inauguration section, we will, before starting the exact quantum computing, it's like you can say we are understanding the quantum computing, and we have come to understand this as well. Quantum computing has the underlying maths. So we will just try to brush up all the quantum computing concepts which require the help of mathematics. So we will be discussing all the mathematics together. So as I mentioned, we need the probability, complex number, and linear algebra. So as I mentioned as well, like the quantum state is basically a vector. So we will try to brush up, like to understand what do you mean by vectors and what are the different properties. It won't take so much of time. And then we will just brush up about the complex number, right? Complex number is a number which has both the real as well as the imaginary part. So we will try to, and most important is to understand the Euler's identity. Okay. So let's start with the introduction of the vectors, right? So we just got vectored, yeah. In the binary and in the classical computing, we were only the integers, right? Or you can say only the floating point numbers and etc., right? We were only playing with 1, 0, 2, 3, and etc., right? So, but now we are like in the vector mode. So before this, it's a very simple. I think the slides I have made in such a way they are very much self-explanatory, right? So scalar, I think once I display the slide, I can wait for 1 minute and you can just read the slides. The slide itself will indicate what the thing is. Scalar is very well known. The quantity is having only the magnitude, no direction. So vector is with having both the magnitude and direction, right? And scalar we represented by generally by a numbers, and few examples are distance, speed, time, and mass along with its units. And vector is basically represented, it has both the magnitude and the direction. So magnitude is scalar, right? And it scalar can also be given as a Cartesian form, as well as it has an angle or direction. So that can be defined by a radius or as well as angle. So this is the way how it's written. This symbol indicates the arrow mark, right? It's a vector. So few examples of vectors, displacement, velocity, acceleration, right? So we say like velocity. So it itself indicates we are moving in which path, north, east, south, and etc. Yes. So few examples of scalars. So it's like 30 M, like these are the games here. Then what is the temperature of the fire here? It's like 100 degrees Celsius. It does not have any direction, right? So then we have a pen drive. We don't measure, okay, this direction is having this much of memory storage capacity. We say, okay, this is having 1 TB. Okay. Next, vector examples. So this is an example, we say flying up at 10 meter per second, right? So up itself indicates the direction, right? Then Isaac Newton, like this is a funny example with a car, right? So you are putting a force of 10 Newton at minus 20 degree, like this is being put by the Isaac Newton, right? So the car is also putting an opposite force with a magnitude at the negative, right? So that it makes it in the equilibrium state. So this vectors is related to what is the quantum state. Please have a look into this picture very closely. This is what the quantum states is defined. So this circle which it is defining the sphere, it's also called as a Bloch sphere. Okay. So this is the source taken by the ResearchGate article, and this indicating by the arrow mark is basically defining what the quantum state is. Okay. So we have already learned about the X gate as well as the Y gate, right? So we will be understanding about the Z gate as well very soon. So now let's, before we wrap up, before for the inauguration, so let's play around with the quantum quiz, right? So you can go through this quiz, like so that you can just have a look whether you can define which one is a scalar and which one is vector. Please, no, I think everyone can have a paper and pen. If required, you can note it down. In the next slide, I will show what the answer is. I will wait for 30 seconds and then I will show the answer. Okay, so this is a solution of the quiz, like scalar or vector, right? So the fish is swimming at 1 meter, so it's a scalar. So saucer ball, it's like 40 degrees has been mentioned with a force of 20 Newton, so it's a vector. Again, the piano has a mass, okay? So mass is like without any direction, so it's a scalar. But a piano has a weight of this, right? So like they are just calling this as a piano. Yeah, it's like similar, just to indicate the color only. Yeah, it's nothing like related to like we are changing the name of the animal. Okay. So 900 Newton. So it has a weight, right? So mass as well as the center of gravity. So it's a vector. Okay. So this is just a representation how the vector can be notated. As we are mentioning, it has the magnitude and the direction. So generally the vector is represented by the 2D, right? So it has a value in a particular x direction as well as the y direction. So general 2D vector notation. So V with an arrow, it indicates this as a vector. So it has the magnitude in the x direction as well as in the y direction. Okay. So let's take an example here. So if you want to represent a 2D, so this is the graphical representation where x-axis indicates the magnitude in the x direction as well as y-axis indicates the value. So let's take an example. Suppose we take A point. So it has a magnitude of 2 in the x-axis and the magnitude of 2 in the y-axis, right? So we can represent it by 2, 2. Similarly, various other examples I have attended. Yeah. So we should keep on learning, right? Whether it's a 20 or 70. Yeah. So let's do that, right? So even if we learn a small difference here in this course, I think that's where we are, like we can say we have excelled a step ahead. Yeah.
Very true.
So with this, like, let's start, right? So as we were discussing, like about what do we mean by scalar and vector, right? So we are basically starting the very basic level maths again, right? To understand how the correlation will happen. Yeah. So how the quantum computing is entangled to the basic mathematics as well. Yeah. So as we have discussed here, like basically like how the vector can be noted it down, right? So if it's a 2D, so x direction and y direction, we will have the magnitude regarding this. So a beautiful example by indicating on the graph is already given it up here, right? So I gave an example regarding this point A. So it's like 2 and 2, so we can indicate in this way as well, right? Similarly for the B, this point, so you can see on the x-axis is C and on the y-axis it's 7, so we can note it out in the 6 and 7. So when I say vector from A to B, so it's a relative distance between these two, so we can subtract the magnitude of the point B with A, right? So 6 minus 2 is 7, 7 minus 2 is 5. So this is also a way to represent. The main thing is like basically the first element will define the x direction, similarly for y. And this is applied for the higher dimension as well, right? For example, if you put it 3D, so it will have x, y, and z, right? So it will have a single column vector, right? So next, like again, like it's a quiz time, yeah. So why I'm putting some quiz questions, so that it creates a curiosity as well as no one sleep during the session, yeah. So that it's an alert, right? So what's going on? Can you just spend 30 seconds to? I think it will be better if everyone have a copy and pen ready with it, so that you can just note it down. After 30 seconds, I will show the solution, because we can't take one by one as an quiz, right? So just have a look into this, and like can you just note down all the coordinates, and please note it down. We are understanding the vector representation in the xy values, because that's where the quantum gates as well as the states vector will be related. Okay, so let's wait for 30 seconds, then we move ahead. Okay, so I think everyone agrees with this solution. Yeah, you can have a look on this. So let's me take only a single example. A, x it's a 2 and y is 7. So we can define it in this way, 2 and 7. Similarly for B and C. Okay, so next it's the opposite way around here. Like it's like you have to sketch the three vectors on the Cartesian plane. When I say Cartesian plane, it's basically in the graphical representation. So here, like right now, it's the other way around. All the vectors and x and y coordinate values are given, right? So you have to plot it. So I think everyone agrees with this solution. Yeah. Okay, it's very simple enough, right? So let's take 1, 1, 0. So x-axis it's 1, y. Yeah, someone has put that. Yes, thank you for answering. Yeah. So this is like one of the examples. So we have understood both the way. Once we have a vector, then also we can do plot it in the Cartesian plane, or the vice versa. If we have the values in the Cartesian plane, we can say the vector as. So we are one step ahead. Yeah, at least we have understood about the quantum states, how it can be represented. So again, like vector properties, as we have discussed the Cartesian plot form, and similarly we have the polar form. So I think this itself indicates, so x and y components here, if you see, we take this as a vector. So x is 5 and 5. So this is what we have. I think everyone agrees again with this. So now when we convert it into the polar form, so we basically find out the radius as well as the angle theta. Yeah. So how we find out the radius, it's well known using the Pythagoras theorem. Square root of x square plus y square, yes, as well as the theta value can be calculated. So everyone agrees with this value, r is equal to 5. See, there might be small things which I have put it intentionally incorrect, but I don't agree with this value of r equal to 5. Yeah. So please find out the exact value, what it should be. It should be 5 square root of 2, right? So that's what, like, vectors is basically why they are called vector, because it's a saying this is a vector. The name of the person is vector is mentioning why I'm called a vector, because I have both the direction and magnitude. Okay. So vector magnitude, as we have discussed, this is the magnitude, how we calculate it, square root of vx square plus vy. Generally, the notation is given by the same symbol, right? So if we take an example as 6 and 4, right, with the x value as 6 and y as 4, so the value can be calculated using this. And this is the graphical, or you can say Cartesian form by which it's represented. Okay. So again, as for the vector direction, we take the tan inverse of the magnitude of the value in the y direction and x direction. That's what the formula can be applied, and we find it out. Either we put the value in the theta, or we can take it in the form of the radian as well. Okay. So again, a question like, can you just calculate for this value, right? You can write out the expression, no need to calculate it as well. I think with this pictorial as well, you can have a look into this. So I think everyone agrees with this slide, because that's what was incorrect there, right? If you remember this slide, it was r equal to 5, right? It should be 5 root of 2. So this is the actual solution, right? So this is the value. How we calculate the magnitude? We take the square root of x and y, right? Similarly, direction, we take the tan inverse of it. It might seem very silly to mention all this, but this is just a revision, right? So that you can start it from the very one step once we complete the Atal scheme, right? So that you know at least the basic where to start the foundation. So vector properties. So what are the few vector properties? All vector have the same magnitude, right? So this is an example, right? But they can have different directions. All these are having the same magnitude but different direction. Here, the other way around, it can have the same direction, but it's not required to have the same magnitude. So seeing the length as well as the example, we can indicate as well. So based on these figures also, we can find it out what is the direction and magnitude, or based on the mathematical values as well. Till the last slide, we discussed on the mathematical values. And this is also one of the representation by which we can indicate whether the vectors are having the same magnitude and what is the direction, whether they are having the same magnitude or different directions. So the same rule what applies for the scalar addition, similarly the vector addition also applies. So if you have two vectors A and B, you can do the vector addition by adding the x values as well as the y values. Okay. So vector addition, this is an example. If A vector 1 and 2, right, B vector 5 and 7, so we can add it up. 1 plus 5 is x value 6, 9, and 2 plus 7, 9. Or we can add the other way as well, 5 plus B plus A as well. So this property itself indicates as we are getting the same value, so it's like associative, right? So next is like vector scalar multiplication. So suppose this symbol itself indicates it's having an arrow, that means it's a vector. You can multiply by a vector by a scalar, and that scalar value will be multiplied for both the elements in the x and y direction. So this is one representation. For example, if you have an omega vector and you multiply it with a scalar of -1, so the angle of rotation will be changed, right? So as it was pointing towards the upward direction, it starts moving to the below direction. So similarly, there are other examples. If you take b equal to half, so if you take any value less than 1, so it basically it's like you are decreasing the magnitude of it, and if you multiply it with higher value, you are just increasing the magnitude of it, and if you multiply it by 1, you are keeping it intact at the same, and if you are multiplying it with a negative value, you are changing the direction. So multiplying by negative, changing the direction, multiply by a value less than 1, you are decreasing the magnitude, keeping the magnitude equal to 1. You can multiply it with a constant value of 1, and if you want to increase the magnitude of the vector, you just multiply it with a value higher than 1. Okay. So again, another question, right? So basically this is the example, like if you want to add two vectors, right? So how you do it? You just multiply the vector values x and y. So blue indicates this vector, green indicates this vector. So we can add it. And this is an example if you multiply it by a scalar value. Okay. So what will be the solution for this? It will be 7 plus 1, 8, 2 plus 6, 8, right? And here the solution, since the scalar multiplied is less than 1, so this will be scaled up to a lower value. So this is the solution, right? So everyone agrees with this? So the graph itself indicates you have multiplied with a less than 1, so the length has decreased. So magnitude is only changing, but the direction is the same. And here, when you are adding it up, so this red one indicates the summation solution of this. So similarly, vector decomposition, please note it down. This is a very important property which will be required for the quantum computing, right? And this is what the concept generally we use for a unit vector, right? Which indicates a direction. When you put a cap on a vector, it indicates a unit vector. And it indicates like the magnitude of the vector is equal to 1. And as we have understood very recently, like square root of x square plus y square, if it is equal to 1, that indicates it's a unit vector. That means the magnitude of the vector should be 1, right? So you can see the magnitude in the x direction. Since it's an x vector, so the unit magnitude is in the x direction. Similarly, y cap, its unit magnitude in the y direction, right? So vector decomposition, what does it mean? You can decompose any vector in the x direction and the y direction, right? So this we can write it down 5 by 4 as we have understood the scalar property, right? Or how the multiplication of a scalar value by a vector, we can split it up into this two, right? And 1 and 0, this is an x cap, so we can write in this way, as well as y cap in this way. So basically what we have done, we have divided the vector into a linear combination of two unit vectors in the x direction and y direction, okay? So this is what can be defined, right? So what is the meaning up here? So basically here also you can see if red one is the vector, you have split it up into two linear compositions, one in the x direction and one in the y direction, okay? And this red and green and blue is indicating the unit vector. You can see it's only marking it until a vector magnitude as 1. Okay. So every vector in R square can be expressed as a linear combination of x cap and y cap. If we extend or if we take higher number of dimensions, so x, y, and z. So the same rule only will be applied, right? And that time it will be 3 cross 1, right? Vector, and similarly the magnitude of the values in the W will be having 3 values. Okay. So now we just generalize the vector. So what we generally we say scalar as we have a term scalar, but scalar is basically 1D vector, right? So this term indicates, as you have seen, R square, right? So this 2 indicates how much dimension we have taken. So A belongs to R to the power 1. So we can say scalar as a 1D vector. Similarly, 2D vector, this is the symbolic representation R2, right? And this is the way how it's represented to have 2 values. Similarly, 3D, R cube, as well as 3 values in each vector. Similarly, 4D, R to the power 4, and D, in this way it keeps on moving, okay? So this is an example for a 2D vector, and this is an example for the 3D vector. So let's generalize it again, how the vector representation has been done. So this is the way it can be represented for the ND vector, right? Or N column vector, right? So how the vector addition happens, we have taken a beautiful example taking 2D and we have explained it. Similarly, vector scalar multiplication is also been explained. Please note it down, this is a vector scalar multiplication. We haven't looked into vector multiplication yet, right? And this term itself indicates this is only a vector marked with an arrow and C is a scalar value, okay? And if you take the C equal to 0, that means you are making this vector value to be equal to a 0 vector. And how we calculate the vector magnitude, the same rule applies. Even if it's ND, you will be squaring each of the values and you will adding it up and you will take the square root of it. So why now I think it's clear to everyone, like we have discussed a very basic about the vectors, right? So we are moving ahead with the complex numbers, right? So when we say complex numbers, right? So this is just you can say a statement based. This can't be real, looks useless, or better yet imaginary. We have a very common sentence said, right? Hey, see, he always stays in the imaginary world, right? So it's nothing basically as the importance of the real, it's same applies for the imaginary. If we are not able to see the dreams, right, we are not able to make it in the practicality or the real as well. So there it comes the importance of both the real and imaginary, and the combination of both the real and imaginary makes it a complex number, yeah. So it's a saying, yeah, see, this person is very complex because he or she has the dreams as well as he is working in the real world as well. So let's take an example here. Square root of 100, it's plus minus 10. So this number is called as a real number only because it does not have an imaginary, right? So similarly, this 25 positive number, if you take the square root, we know the solution is a real value. But what about if you take the square root of minus 1, right? So negative number, we don't know. Generally, we take it a particular value as I or G to indicate like it's an imaginary number, right? And how we calculate it, let's say like we find out the solution of a root of a quadratic equation. It's a well-known general form of a quadratic equation, and we find out the solution. This is a general solution. It can have the real solution as well as or the imaginary. And generally the square root of b square minus 4ac, this is the part which plays a role to make it a imaginary values or not. If b square minus 4ac value is less than 0, that indicates like you have an imaginary part. So this part is responsible for making it imaginary part. Okay. So the imaginary unit, yeah, as it's mentioned, like negative part, so should have a negative value, and we use the imaginary unit as I. If anything is multiplied by I, we indicate in the mathematical term that's the imaginary part. You must be the square root of -1 because you can't be real. Okay, so if you have anything multiplied by I, it indicates like it's an imaginary, you are not real. But if you take the square of it, it becomes -1. That means it's become a real number again. Okay. So this is an example. If like you take 3i, then it's an imaginary. If you take 3i square, it becomes -9. You are converted into the real once you take the square of it. Okay. So similarly, example square root of -a. So -a can be written into a into -1. So a can be in the square root and I can come out of the square root. Okay. So similarly, these are an example 6 equal to square root of 36, how we can link it up. Yeah. So y -1 I square, this one, I think we can ignore this. So now what's so complex about complex numbers? Yeah, so a complex number consists of both the real component as well as the imaginary component, right? So complex number are basically indicated by z is equal to the real component a plus I is the imaginary unit, as we have discussed, is equal to the square root of -1, and b is the imaginary component or imaginary coefficient. Okay. So for example, if I say 5 plus 0i, we can write in this way, but it does not indicate like it has an imaginary value, right? Because I is multiplied by 0. It's real number only. Or the other way around, if you take imaginary number, if you take real as 0 plus 6i, it does not indicate that it's a real number. Yeah, it's still an imaginary because you are multiplied, you are added it up with the real value. Okay, so this 0 plays a very much important role to find it out whether actually you are real or you are imaginary or you are combination of both. Okay, so these are a few examples, or you can say a quiz time. So I think you can spend 30 seconds or around 1 minute to find it out whether it's complex. When I say complex, both real and imaginary. Purely real, that means it's you are having only real or as well as the pure imaginary. So 30 seconds or 1 minute you can spend on this. Then I will show you the solution of this. So this is the solution. So here when it's written real, that means it's a purely real, okay? As well as only like imaginary, it indicates it's a purely imaginary. I think once you go it, someone can post in the public chat to indicate, yeah, like we are done with this and we can proceed further. Okay, thank you. So let's proceed further. So next, I think this is the replica of what we have discussed. So now we comes like why we understood, we have gone through the vector part, right? So complex number we have understood, vector also we have understood. So complex number can additionally be represented as a vector and as well as a 2D because it has only two components, right? So x component can be the real component and y component can be the imaginary component. So we can indicate the complex number into the vector notation. So once vector, again we can go to the 2D plot, right? So it's a Cartesian form as well as we can go through the polar form. I think now you can relate why we are understanding this thing. So very soon, I think then it will be very interesting for you to know like why we read this, what's relation of this with the quantum states, yeah? So similarly, an example like z is equal to 3 plus 4i. So this is a vector, how this can be noted. So once you have the vector, you can get it in the complex plane as well. So now once we are plotting the complex number, we call it a complex plane, right? Because it's very complex. Yeah, it has a real and imaginary, right? So x value is 3 and y value is 4. So this indicates a vector, okay? So your homework isn't that complex, right? Homework is equal to square root of -1, yeah? So it isn't that complex because it has only the imaginary part, right? It does not have the real. Our teacher imagined like we will complete the entire homework, yeah? Okay. So again, as we did for the vector addition, similarly, the complex addition also happens. We will be just adding up all the real part. So if you take this example, so A and C is the real part, we are adding that part, and the complex part, I, we can just add it up this part. So this can be applied in the vector form as well, right? So K vector, we can, if we take this example, -1 plus 2i, L is equal to 3 plus 4i, we can add it directly in the complex form as well. We are getting the answer 2 plus 6i, or you can do it in the vector form also. 1 plus 2 you can write in the vector. Similarly, L you can write in the vector, and then you can do the vector addition. And if you see, we are getting the same solution. 2 plus 6i and values 2 and 6 are the same. And once you have this value, as well as you can do it in the Cartesian plot as well. So similarly, complex multiplication also works this out. So this is the formula by which we can do the complex addition as well, right? And the vice versa, you can do it as well by taking it in the vector form as well, and multiplication in that format as well. So this is an example by which it can be done, right? So k equal to 1 plus 2i, L equal to 3 plus 3 minus i. We can do direct multiplication here and formulate it, or you can take the help of the vectors as well as calculate it as well. So again, it's a quiz time. Yeah, so quantum quiz time, these are the 3 examples. I would request you all to spend 1 minute on this, because once the session is over, I assume like again, it's a superposition. Yeah, 90% will be trying it and 10% won't be trying it, right? So just try this for a minute and then I will show you the solution. So this is the solution regarding this. I think everyone agrees, and someone can post in the public chat. Okay, someone has posted it. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. So let's proceed further. Okay, so these are the very simple examples. So similarly, we have the complex conjugation as well. You can take the conjugate of the number, and here the properties, the real part will be the same, only the imaginary part will be changed, right? So if you take it from the complex plane, so you can say, suppose for example, here you are taking the z vector. So x value is 3, this is 4, so this is 3 plus 4i. Once you take the complex conjugate of it, the imaginary part values only becomes a conjugate, right? So it's like the direction of this will be changing from the upper direction towards the direction. So you can see that the magnitude is of the x-axis, that means the real part is 3 only, but the imaginary part is -4. Okay. So this is an example how the complex conjugation can happen. So similarly, like vectors, so this is the way how we find out the modulus of it. So square root of a square plus b, and if you can take the square of it, so the value square will be equal to a square plus b square. Okay. And the other way to find out the modulus is, as we discussed, we have the vector z, and then we have the complex conjugate of it as well. And once we multiply this two and find out the square root, this will also give you the solution of the modulus value. Okay, based on this only the value lies at a square plus b square. So again the quantum quiz time. So please have a look into this slide. This I'm just presenting in this because we are running a bit short of time. Yeah. So can you just have a look into this along with the solutions and just mark it in the public chat whether it's clear to you all or not. Is it okay? Okay, thank you. So with this, we have a complete understanding how the complex numbers also work. So here comes the most important part. Yeah, we mentioned about the complex number and we have learned it in the basic mathematics also, Euler's formula, right? So what does the Euler formula mentions? E to the power I of phi is equal to cos phi plus sine of phi. Basically, we are putting the x value and the y value in terms of trigonometric functions, right? And this is the format which is required for the polar representation, right? So when we are putting it in the polar plane, we basically find out the cos theta, cos phi or sine phi, because we need the angle to place the value, right? And how much angle it is forming with the x-axis as well as the y-axis. Here you can see x value can also be marked as real, RE, as well as y-axis can also be marked as the imaginary, because x value is relating to the real component and y value is relating to the imaginary. So polar representation can be given in this form: z is equal to x plus iy, and x is equal to mod of z cos of phi. Similarly, y is mod of z sin phi, right? And this value can be written as r equal to e phi. I think this is well known to us. And what is the r? This is the vector radius. Radius is equal to the modulus of the complex variable. So that's given again by a square root of x square plus y square. And similarly, the vector angle, as we discussed when we were discussing about the vector as well. So tan theta is equal to y by z. So we can find out the phi tan inverse of y by x. So vector angle and vector radius. Everywhere we need the magnitude as well as the direction. Okay, so this is the Euler's formula which is required. So what is the Euler's identity formula? So this indicates e to the power I phi theta, e to the power I pi plus 1 is equal to 0, right? So what this pi is, this is the value of the theta, right? So basically we find it out cos of theta. So instead of theta, we will be placing the value of pi. And then we can formulate it and we can find it out. Left hand side will be equal to 0 only, right? So for example, if we find it out what is the angle, whether it's lying in the x-axis, right? So we can apply the value of this and we can formulate, or the vice versa. If we get the value of any phi here, right? If it is getting the right hand side equal to 0, we indicate that it is not having any value in both the x and y. It's either lying in the x only. Okay. Or this value also indicates r is equal to 1, and this is required when you want to design any unit vector as well. Okay. Okay, so this is the history based on which why the tangent formula was applied and what is the Euler's work related to this. So in 1917-14, he represented a geometric argument. So this is the argument which was used. Based on this, if we take the exponential on both sides, so e to the power ix, so this ln exponential will be cancelled it up. So sin x plus I sin theta. You can see this again converts to a complex number, right? So this is the way. So if you put the x value or the theta value to be pi, so this becomes equal to 0. So it's a sad Euler's identity noise. So when you have discovered so many things that people stop naming things after you, but the thing you are most known for wasn't even discovered by you. Yeah. So that's you can say sad Euler's is mentioning his point. Yeah. So he found out all this and ultimately landed it up to somewhere 0. Yeah. So these are a few things, like based on this method on the exponential also we can do the addition as well, and indirectly if you have the exponential values you can find out the cos theta by adding it up e to the power I5 plus e to the power complex conjugate of this value, right? And similarly sin phi as well. Sin phi is basically related to the imaginary, so we subdivide it by in the denominator by I. Okay. So generally addition of complex number is very challenging, but if you want to do multiplication, then exponential is the best option to do it. Okay. So as just now I mentioned, multiplication of the exponential direct lands it up in the addition of the exponential part. So again, like here, you can see if you have multiply by the two complex variable in the Cartesian formula, so you have to do huge calculations to find it out, right? But if you just convert a plus ib into a complex exponential as well as c plus id into a complex exponential, and then just when you do multiplication, you have it in a very simple in addition, then again you can convert this back to the exponential formula. Okay, so this is a bit little complex, right? And this is a bit easier, but it both will give land you to the same result. It depends on which you are interested. Yeah. Okay. So as discussed, like how the modulus can be calculated as well. Generally, modulus of an exponent is equal to 1, right? So when we find out the modulus, so this is the way how this can also land it up in a very simpler way when you want to find out the modulus as well, if you have the polar exponentials part as well. So this is just an example. We are repeatedly discussing this, right? How that can be a complex, how this can be converted into exponential, and how the magnitude and the angle will be. At the end of the story, it's like everywhere we need the magnitude and the direction. So this is also other the way how the conjugate can be found that only the phase will be changing, right? So that we have also discussed from the Cartesian plot as well when we discuss about the complex conjugation. So this is again like an task, but this is like how the complex exponent operation works it out. So these were the 5 questions. I think you can have a look into this. And let me know if everyone agrees, then we move ahead on this. Yeah, someone can put in the chat if it's okay, like else I proceed further. Okay, thank you. Okay, so these are the things. So now we understand, yeah. So we have understood the importance of square root of -1, right? So they are like, we can say like mathematicians just think they're very cool for the regular vectors, right? And what is the importance of complex numbers? Complex number aren't just vectors; they are also the extension of the real numbers as well as, and the most important, the complex number are the fundamental theory of the algebra and the entire complex analysis, right? So basically more math motivation, right? So you might be thinking instead of quantum we are learning maths, right? So maths is hard, so is life, but we have to understand the mathematics. Yeah, so we can say it's superposition or the glass is half empty. Yeah, so when the glass is half full, we don't know whether we have a complete glass of water or we have a half or we are having an empty, right? So that moment when you understand something in maths class, so we feel like, generally I used to feel, I can say, like I used to feel, yeah, sab kuch pata hai, right? Something like, it's like I understood this problem. That's a right, the very important thing what I did throughout the day. So like let's have a patience. So where quantum is coming up very soon, but whatever we have discussed, this is the base already. 90% we have covered it up. What is the base to understand how the quantum state can be written it out? Okay. Okay, so as this slide, again a repetition, like why all the maths. So basically, as we have understood probability, okay, we haven't looked into the probability yet, but we have understood about the linear algebra a little bit from the vector perspective, as well as we have understood the complex number as well. Okay, So we have discussed about multiple things related to the vectors, right? As well as about the scalars as well as now we will understand a few more properties related to the vectors as well as the matrices, right? So now a question might be coming up, yeah, why vectors, why matrices? I will say, please listen it very properly. Quantum states are vectors and quantum gates are matrices. Please note it down. Quantum state are vectors and quantum gates are matrices. That's why we are learning this thing. Okay. So we will go through few more vector properties, okay, as well as then we will start discussing about the matrices as well. We will understand how the matrix has been noted, then matrix addition, multiplication, matrix to scalar, matrix to vector, matrix to matrix, and transpose and conjugate. I think we can go very quickly on this because I think basic brush up of how the things like from the vector, scalar, multiplication. Then comes the important thing, solving linear systems of equation, right? So in the mathematics course, we learn about the different methods, how to solve the linear system of equations, as well as based on the number of variables, we have the number of equations, right? And as much vaguely I remember, we used to use the Cramer's rule, right, to solve or find out the solution of the linear system of equation, okay? So we will be looking into what's the identity matrix. Why we are understanding the identity matrix? Because the quantum gates are identity matrix. Okay, so we need to understand the property and then we need to understand the matrix inversion, because as the quantums are the reversible computing, so we should know the reverse, right? So we should know, if you know the output, how the input can be calculated. Okay, so again, like more vectors, yeah, so we have just got vectored, so it's a part 2, right? So we are moving to the part 2 of it. So now comes the important thing. Please look it very closely. What do vectors mean for quantum computing? We has discussed so much basics about the vectors, right? But where vectors are required and where does it stand for quantum computing? So qubits are two-level quantum systems that lie in the Bloch sphere. As I mentioned, this is the Bloch sphere, right? And any state can be represented as a vector. I think now you can link it up. How, why this has been mentioned. So as I mentioned in the superposition, right? 50%, 50%. So that's a quantum state. So the first value will tell you what will be the probability to have in the zero state, and the second value will tell you what is the probability to have in the one state. So once you know the value of theta, you can find out the probability of in the zero state, or the vice versa. If you know what is the zero value, you can find out the theta value. So in the Bloch sphere, basically this is indicating a vector, right? So psi is a vector and it indicates the theta and phi value to indicate like how much angle it has been connected to the x, y and z rotations, okay? And this Bloch sphere is basically the 3D representation of this. I think this beautifully connect you how the vectors are being related to the quantum computing. So the same thing, whatever we have discussed, as we have understood, right? So quantum state, so all the rules whichever we have discussed for the vectors just apply same here. Vector representation, same. So this is a quantum state, right? So you can note it out in the ket q, and this will be the value represented. Vector addition will also be applied. Vector scalar will also be applied in the same, as well as the vector magnitude. Okay, so now we also have to look into the shape of the vector, or we can say the shape of the matrix, right? So generally a matrix or a vector has a rows and the number of columns, and based on the number of rows only we decide whether we can multiply the two vectors or we can multiply two matrices and etc. So we are going to discuss a little bit about the shape, right? As well as like an important idea which is very much required. We need to know about the rows and columns when we do the vector and matrix multiplication. So the rows can also be defined with the various boats in the like in an ocean, right? And similarly, the columns can be represented as the pillars in a building, right? So this is an example to understand the rows are the horizontal lines, or the columns are the vertical lines similar to the pillars. So I'm just giving all this figure so that we, because images are very easy to pick it up so that we never forget it. And how the shape of a vector represent, the first one defines the row and the second one defines the column. So the column vector, what we have only multiple rows and a single column. So it indicates n cross 1, right? And row vector is having a single value single row and multiple columns. So the column means this part and as well as the row. So it itself indicates column is like pillars of a building as well as the row as the boats in the ocean. Okay, and please note it down, this indication. I think we are very well known to this, how this has been marked it out. So again, like give the shape of the following vectors. So instead of giving the time, I think you can have a look into this. And the red one indicates the value. You can have a look into this and put in the chat once it's clear to you. I think they are very simple to understand, yeah. But the very much important thing what we have discussed, how the vectors are related to a quantum state, and this lands it up to a quantum computing, right? So now I think everyone know what is quantum state. Quantum state is basically a vector, right, which has an x and y value. X value is representing the probability of the zero state, as well as y is representing for the one state. Okay. So someone can post in the chat if it's okay. I think it's very simple, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so again, similar to this logic, so transpose, what is that? It changes the row to a vector, row to a column and column to a row, right? So if you take the transpose of a row vector, it becomes a column vector and vice versa, okay? So it's like as vector transpose, so you can see this is a vector, right? So it has been transposed to another vector, and similarly vice versa rule also applies, okay? I'm not going to mention whether it's a column vector and row vector. I leave to you to understand which represents which, okay? So again, like find out the transpose. So please go through this example. So this is one vector, you take the transpose, and the transpose mathematically is represented by a capital T, okay? So you can see this vector has been changed to a row vector, has been changed to a column vector, right? Or the vice versa. Again, I'm repeating, I'm not mentioning whether what I mentioned, it's a row or column. It's a correct. I leave on to you. Yeah. There should be few queries which you need to be answered on your own. So now comes the most important thing again related to it's the inner product, right? So what do you mean by the inner product? So this now I think you can understand based on this ket, right? It's basically indicating the quantum state. You are taking the inner product of two quantum states. So when I say inner product of two quantum states, it's basically taking the inner product of two vectors, right? So this is the way how we calculate it. And this can be also noted down in the summation. And here it indicates where V and W are belongs to Rn. What do we mean by n? It depends like how many rows you are taking, right? So note in literature, you might also hear the inner product is also referred as the dot product or the scalar product, because ultimately once you take the inner product, it will land you to a single value. It's a scalar, or you can say it also as a 1D vector. That's what we have discussed as well, right? So these are the points. So if you take just turns it out, it's a lot more than just that, though. It's a vector into vector lands to a scalar mapping. This is a very much important tool for calculating vector magnitude as well. If you take the inner product of two same vectors, right, that also give you the value of the magnitude. And this is very much required to do make the normalized of a vector, right? So vector normalization, so that it converts it to a unit vector. And this is a very important tool for geometrically comparing vectors, and this is very much important to find out the orthogonality. If the inner product is equal to 0, this might or might not say like whether the vector is orthogonal. So it's blowing, right? So itna kuch hai yahan pe, yeah, but it's nothing. Everything is simple once you just understand the mathematical representation, or like the other way around, if you understand the physical meaning, you find out the solution. Okay. So inner product is very much important, and this will again relate us to the quantum computing very soon. So inner product, so this is an example, how does it happen, right? So if we take these two vectors, we take the inner product, we take the transpose of the first vector, and then we multiply it by element. So this is the final, and this can also land it up in writing it up in the summation form. So this is an example how we can find it out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we take the inner product. So you can take the first one transpose or the second one, because if the size, there is no problem with the shape. So you can say 1 into 4, 2 into 5, 3 plus 6. So this is the value, 4 plus 10 plus 18. So it's equal to 32. So you can see the inner product has landed up to a single scalar value. Okay. So it's like you can say this is also a 1D vector. So now if we take the inner product of a vector with itself, we indicate like it gives a magnitude, but the magnitude will be the squared magnitude. So if you need the exact value of that, you can take the square root of it. But why we are taking the inner product to find out the square? What this is called is, this is also called as the norm as well, right? We can find out the norm of a vector, or like the value of this will tell you how, if you divide it by this square root of this value, it will tell you like how to make it a normalized vector. The inner product of a vector with itself gives us the magnitude squared, right, of the vector. Note the magnitude of the vector is also called as the norm. Okay, and please note it down. When I say belongs to R of n, it indicates the number of dimensions, or 2D or 3D vector. It indicates how many direction we are taking it up. Okay, so inner product is a very much important property which can also help us to find out the vector magnitude. So I think now we need not to worry. Yeah, so once we say the inner product of any two vectors, you just have to apply this formula and you can find it out. And if we know the inner product value, you can also find out the magnitude of the vector as well. Okay, so this is the way. Once you find it out, you can take the square root of this and find out the magnitude. So I think we can skip this. So we can find out the norm of calculate the norm of the magnitude, as just now we discussed. If we take the inner product of the vector with itself and take the square root, we find out the magnitude of it. And this ultimately this land up to this part, square root of 1 square plus 2 square. That's what is how the actual mathematics regarding the magnitude is also calculated. Similarly for this also we can find it on here. You can see this is a unit vector because the magnitude of this has come up to be 1. But here in the first example, the magnitude of it's equal to square root of 14. So that does not indicate this is a unit vector. If you want to make it a normalized or a unit vector, you have to divide all the magnitude by square root of 14. Okay, then you take it out, then you will see the magnitude of this lands up to a 1. Okay. So the inner product is very much required for the vector normalization as well. Just now what we discussed, right? A vector is normalized if it has a magnitude of 1. A normalized vector is also called as a unit vector. We are very well known with the term unit vector. So that's a normalized vector. So how can we find it out, any vector, or how can we convert any vector into a normalized vector, right? So the vector divided by the square root of the inner product of this. So once you apply this formula, the resultant of this will be a vector because on the numerator it's a vector. So that will be a normalized vector. So here you can see V is equal to 1 and 2, right? So the inner product of this can be calculated as 5. And once you take the square root of 5, this is the magnitude, right? And then you divide 1 by square root of 5, 2 by square root of 5, right? Scalar can be divided and applied to each of the values. So this one is basically, you can see this is the unit vector. And how you can check it? Square root of 1 by square root of 5 whole square plus this. Then you do it square root of 1 by 5 plus 4 by 5. This will land you to the 1. Once you have the magnitude value equal to 1, right, you can say it's a normalized vector or it's a unit vector, or you have converted it to a normalized vector. Okay, so normalizing, we call it a unit vector, but by golly we liked it. Yeah, like from the mathematical perspective we might not like it, but theoretically it's clear. When we say normalize, the magnitude is equal to 1. So the inner product vector normalization, please have a look into all these symbols. So when we take a single bar both sides, it's an absolute value. When you take double bar, it's like a magnitude. And when you divide the vector by the magnitude, it's like a unit vector. Okay. This is the general symbols which are used, but you might find different notations in different books because there are different styles written by different authors. Yeah. But this is a standard format by which it is being used. Okay. So let's check if the following vector is normalized or not. So how we will check it out? So we have these two values. So the first rule is we will find out the magnitude of this. So square root of this whole square will be 2 of 5. So this will be 3 of 5 whole square. So 2 by 5 plus 3 by 5. I think it will be square root of 5 by 5. That will be equal to 1. Okay. So check whether the following vector is normalized. If not, what is the normalized one? So I think we are running short of time, so we won't land into this. But this is the solution. We find out the magnitude, we find it out square root of 13. This is not equal to 1. So we can say since this is not equal to 1, the vector is not normalized. So how we normalize it? So this vector we divided by magnitude, right? So 2 by square root of 13, 3 by square root of 13. So then you take the magnitude of this will land you to the value of 1. Okay. So now the most another interesting property, the inner product will help you to find out the geometrically comparing. When I say geometrically comparing, so if there will be a angle between the two vectors, so based on this value, let's note it down by theta. So based on this value of theta, we can find it out whether the two vectors are orthogonal. If you say orthogonal, that means this two vector angle is having 90 degree, right? If we say parallel, right, that means the value of theta will be 0 degree, right? So how we calculate the value of theta? Cos inverse inner product of x and y divided by the modulus of both of this, right? So this is the formula by which we can apply. And what is the value of theta? Theta will tell you the value of the angle between these two vectors. So the inner product also help us to find out the angle between these two vectors. Okay. So based on just what just now I mentioned, right? So if theta is equal to 0, we can say the two vectors are parallel, right? If the angle between these two is pi by 2, that means 90 degree, right? So we can say it's orthogonal or perpendicular. When we say, okay, this vector and this vector are orthogonal, that means the angle between these two or the inner product of both of this lands to equal to 0. And when we say anti-parallel, right? So that time the inner product of this will be equal to -1. Either from the value of theta or from the inner product, you can say like whether they are parallel, anti-parallel or orthogonal, right? So this is the conclusion. Theta equal to 0, inner product equal to 1. Either of this condition, both the vectors are parallel, orthogonal when theta is 90 degree and the inner product is equal to 0. Anti-parallel when the theta is 180 degree. It's like opposite, or as well as the inner product is -1. So if you find out the inner product, you can definitely conclude whether the vectors are parallel, orthogonal, or anti-parallel. Yeah. So the inner product is basically a similarity measure between the vectors. So I think this is similar. So once if you find it out, I think we discuss between these two. And if you find out the different values of the theta lying between 0 and 90 also, then we can say, okay, they are having an acute angle, obtuse angle as well. And these three are the boundary conditions related to this. So these two conditions, whether theta lie between 0 and 90 and 90 to 180, yeah. So this does not lie to any of these three conditions. So with this, we can find out the inner product. I think we can skip this part. So complex conjugate applies here as well. We have also discussed. Just here to carry forward, I think we can conclude after this. So the complex conjugate, right, is also called the Hermitian conjugate, right? I would request all of you to please have a look into the Hermitian conjugate, right? And it's indicated by V of capital H, right? So it indicates first you take the conjugate and then you take the transpose of it, or the vice versa. I want the answer from all of you in the next class, yeah? Sorry, in the next session whenever we meet it up. So I think we can skip these examples. So how the inner product can be applied as well, yeah? I think we have discussed this as well. Okay. So I think the last I will just discuss in the last 1 minute. So whatever we have applied it up. So let's take a beautiful example as we discuss about the addition. So in the quantum circuits, we generally take the linear combination as well, and we have already looked into how the vector can be decomposed into the linear combination. So we take a fruit salad, right? So it has the strawberry, grapes, and the blueberries as well. So all these components, there might be 6 strawberries, 10 grapes, and the 6 blueberries, right? So the linear combination of the strawberries, grapes, and blueberries has concluded to a salad, right? So it's we can define the strawberry by S, grapes as G, blueberries by B. So the linear expression will be 6S plus 10G plus 6B, right? So a linear combination can be defined, or we can say it's like simply the addition of the terms multiplied by scalar coefficient. So these are the scalars, but strawberry, it's right now we are not mentioning it as a scalar. We are representing this as a vector because we are trying to link it up to the quantum states. Okay. So this is what we have concluded for the linear one. So this is the mathematical representation. Okay, I think Mr. Manas, we are already at the time. So after this, we might discuss in the next session as well. And if anyone has any doubt, you can ask me before the start of the next session. I think it's on the 27th. Yeah. And I hope like I didn't bore you up, and at least the basic understanding of where the quantum works it out, I could mention it up. Yeah. But the relation of this, I think you can just have a thought on this, then you will understand what is related. Just lastly, I will mention 2 points. Quantum state is a vector, okay? And we have understood the properties of the vector. Second, quantum gates are matrices, okay? That's what. And matrices are the square matrices, as well as they should be unit matrix, okay? Okay, so with this, I think we can conclude. Thank you.